is right now, it is a relationship, it is an entity that was designed to steal from the developing nations. It is an entity whose entire purpose and plan and reason for being created was to steal from developing nations. So let's be clear. If we are going to speak truth to power, the UN Security Council has been dysfunctional, remains dysfunctional, until it is an entity that truly represents the whole world. So, yes.
So Africa must unite. For Africa to realize its formidable force, for Africa to assume its true position in the world map on a global stage, one thing must first happen. It is the unification of Africa and its all its descendants. As a Black people, I have always said, we must first realize that our unity, our unification is the point at which our power really lies. Hello, my beautiful people. I hope you're doing good wherever you are. For those that are coming across this channel for the first time, I greet you. I welcome you to the channel as well. And thank you for passing by. We love you and we highly welcome you to this channel. In this channel, we talk matters geopolitics, Pan-Africanism, and Black culture, and the empowerment of the Black culture, the emancipation of the Black people, the unity of Black people. That is exactly what we talk about in this channel. So in today's video, I'm going to share with you a video by Dr. Arikana Chihombori. I love her content very, very much, as you already know, if you have been here for a while. Let's watch this video together. And at the end of this video, we are going to have a few, to say about Africa. So let's just jump right into the video first.
One of the things that Linda Thomas Greenfield, the ambassador of the United States to the UN, said about her resistance to giving more countries a veto on this is that it would make the Council more dysfunctional. And it made me wonder whether any nation should have a veto power. Is there a model in the future of the United Nations where we suspend veto power for all countries and we go to majority votes on key decisions?
First of all, I find that comment very, very insulting. You are simply suggesting that the addition of 2 African countries is going to make the process dysfunctional. What an insult. If this particular situation, we're talking a country like Germany, if we're talking any of the other European countries joining as members of the UN Security Council with veto power, would she still find it as a move that will introduce dysfunction? Or is it the introduction of 2 Black African countries that is problematic? What really makes it very sad is that the voices are coming out of the mouth of a Black woman. Those words are coming out of the mouth of an African American who must understand certain language cannot be used, particularly when we're talking about the international platform. To suggest that introducing 2 African countries will introduce dysfunction, it is sad, it is disrespectful, and it will not be tolerated. Ambassador Thomas Greenfield really needs to retract those words, and she needs to explain herself to say, what do you mean dysfunction? Exactly how are the 2 African countries going to introduce dysfunction, unless, of course, the entity has already been dysfunctional, which in my opinion is the case, and that is what really is the problem with the United Nations. It's a dysfunctional entity, and they need to do what they are mandated to do by the world. So yes, maybe an addition of 2 African countries might straighten it up, and create some normalcy, and for a change have an entity that's going to truly represent people of the world. As it is right now, it is a relationship, it is an entity that was designed to steal from the developing nations. It is an entity whose entire purpose and plan and reason for being created was to steal from developing nations. So let's be clear. If we are going to speak truth to power, the UN Security Council has been dysfunctional, remains dysfunctional, until it is an entity that truly represents the whole world. So yes, they should be ashamed. It is a dysfunctional entity that maybe the inclusion of other nations might actually make it less dysfunctional.
Let me ask you to respond to Martin Kimani, who is the former Kenyan ambassador to the United Nations, and he writes, how does having one or two African countries with veto power further collective African interests? By the time Africa tears itself apart politically to choose those two countries, a fight that will be egged on by global powers, we will end up with deep division, possibly in perpetuity. UNSC reform must be preceded by major African Union reform. Your thoughts and reaction to that, Ambassador Chihombori?
With all due respect, I disagree with the brother severely. Africa must be at the table. We must be where decisions are being made. We must be in a position to also disagree or agree on global issues. Yes, while I understand the dysfunction among us as Africans at the African Union, and I've always said this, that at this point, we don't have the right leadership at the African Union. And I'm hoping that with the new elections that are coming up in February of next year, we are going to have an African Union chair with a head over their shoulders. Right now, we don't have any leadership at the African Union. Moussa Faki has failed us. He's a puppet of the West. We all know that. So yes, I agree with him on one end that we do need reform at the African Union. The good thing for us is there are elections coming up. Moussa Faki is going to be gone. And our hope is we're going to have a new chairman of the African Union who understands the issues and is going to reform the African Union where it can truly represent the people. That is where we need. We got our own homework to do. But that doesn't mean we should give out an opportunity to be at the table. So to just run off and say, well, we are dysfunctional at the African Union, and therefore we are not going to demand that seat at the United Nations Security Council. We need to be there while we continue to reform our African Union, while we continue to work together. And I can tell you, the African leaders, they work together. The issue is, do we have someone at the African Union who can implement and execute the wishes of the African Union? They have a system, even for choosing the chairman of the African Union. It's on a rotational basis. I don't see the African leaders having any problem deciding which two countries are going to be the first ones. They just use the same rotational process. Right. So no, I disagree with that, Ambassador. Seriously, we need to be at the table. But more importantly, I am so glad that Moussa Faki is leaving, and I'm hoping that the next chairman of the African Union, come February, is going to be a Pan-African who's going to stand up, defend Africa, and represent the continent like we must be represented. We demand that, and I'm hoping that we'll get that come February.
If the United Nations and the Permanent Five are more and more anachronistic, more disconnected from the way power is distributed in the world. And, you know, we haven't even begun talking about India or Brazil or other major states and their roles in the Security Council. Aren't there going to develop ways that you can get around the UN, that Africa can have voice and power in other ways? Why does this debate about the Permanent Five matter so much?
Well, it matters in the sense that there needs to be true representation at the United Nations. The United Nations is not about 5 countries. The United Nations is about all countries of the world. So the issue is about having an entity like the United Nations that is controlled by 5 countries where the other countries have no voice, where the other countries, the 5 countries can just veto anything they don't like. I mean, it is so unfair. So yes, what you're going to see is the global South coming together. That is this kind of behavior that is leading to the formation of the BRICS. The global world saying, the global South saying, we have been asking for equity. We have been asking and demanding equality and true representation at the global stage at every level, be it at the United Nations, be it in the financial systems, be it with World Trade Organizations, World Health Organizations. The global South countries are constantly being trampled on. And so it's going to lead to another system that's going to be created where the rest of the world is going to say enough is enough. We're tired of your entities that are not representing us. So to the United Nations and the rest of the Western world, particularly the 5 nations on the Permanent Security Council, they also need to see the writing on the wall and realize that the world is changing. The world is more aware of the geopolitics and what's really going on. And many voices are speaking out as to the wrongs that must be righted. So the sooner they address this issue, the better off the world is going to be. This abusive situation where less developed countries are being taken advantage of and being dictated to, that is not going to continue to work anymore. And the P5 nations must see the writing on the wall and do the right thing, starting with Africa, and then other countries like India, Brazil, they too need to be represented because they are representing millions of people. So you can't just have 1.4 million people in India being voiceless. So yes, after Africa, we must bring India. That's it. That would be my suggestion. And slowly get more countries. Right now, the United Nations, as it stands, it does not represent the world. They're just using other countries to come to the United Nations so they can say, yes, we were there. That if I could influence the African leaders in any way, shape, or form, they need to boycott attending the United Nations General Assembly. There's nothing there for them. So if Africa was to really speak with one voice, they need to boycott the United Nations General Assembly. They're just wasting taxpayers' money, having hundreds of them coming to the United Nations for what? If we're not members of the UN Security Council, we're not attending UNGA. Plain and simple. Africa needs to have a backbone.
Now, we all know that Africa is a force to reckon with. Africa is powerful, but the power of Africa can only be realized when Africa itself picks up itself and we organize our own selves, put our things in line, and show the world who we are. Speak in one voice and tell them who we are. So in this video, Dr. Arikana Chihombori is calling out the United Nations, and this is in regards to the fact that she and many other Pan-Africanists feel that the United Nations in its entirety, not just its Security Council, is not exactly helpful in Africa, is not really helping Africa as it purports to really do. And in my opinion, it's not only the United Nations, but it is actually all these other multilaterals, especially the financial institutions, the World Bank, the IMF, so on and so forth. Now, there are a few things that have led us to where we are today. And one of the most obvious ones is colonialism and colonial legacy. So how has colonial legacy put us to where we are today? See, during the formation of these multilaterals, the United Nations and the rest, Africa came in post colonization, and it was always felt like these, because those that made up these multilaterals are the ones that colonized Africa. They still held Africa at the same position they did see Africa during the time they were colonizing. again, Africa, we as Africa and Black people, even outside of the continent of Africa, often get the short end of the stick because of our own divisive politics and this divisive nature, and the propaganda that was bestowed upon us, that was sowed by the imperialists, that divided us, that made sure that we are not speaking in one voice. And what we have never realized is this was a tactic. The divide and rule is a perfect tactic that helped the imperialists subjugate us, take control of us, set us against ourselves, against each other. I mean, the truth is we are underrepresented and misrepresented when it comes to these multilaterals. And when it comes to crucial decision making, we are not considered because of the fact that, or because of that fact of misrepresentation and underrepresentation. Another problem has to do with leadership. We also have leadership that is either very corrupt, puppets of the West, very, very easily compromised, and they do not actually have the interest of their people at heart. What they actually do is they go there with the greed. They go there for themselves to look for their own selves. Sorry, and not for the entire Africa or nations in Africa. We need to actually be fully represented in these multilaterals. We need to be part of the decision making in the World Bank, in the IMF. We need to be able to be on the table of decision making, to ask questions like, why is it that we as countries, the so-called the underdeveloped, now they love to call us sometimes a euphemistic word, the developing world, why is it that we that need the loans the most are actually the one that have to accrue so much penalties on defaulting because of the so high interest rates that the loans come with? We need to ask those questions, and if at all we don't have space in those multilaterals to be able to sit on those tables of decision making, then we have no business in those multilaterals. We can as well quit, and it's very possible. This is simply the reason why other organizations like currently the BRICS are forming, because people are realizing that a few people hold power, have veto power, want to control all the resources, want to control everybody at the expense of everybody else. Africa need to realize that the first step to going out there on the world stage, on a global stage, and speaking truth to power is if we come back to our own house and prepare for this, and call ourselves to organization, put our African Union into our, call ourselves to a meeting strengthen the AU, the African Union, and lobby for our interest at any given moment. Tell me why Africa only accounts for less than 5% of global pollution, but Africa suffers the devastating effects of global pollution and of course global warming. Tell me why Africa is the producer of almost all raw materials, but Africa does not give out to the world any substantial amount of finished products. But in fact, on the flip side, Africa is a huge consumer of even those products that the raw materials are gotten in Africa, because we are disenfranchised. Our property, we are not coming together as a people to in unity to put our forces together and exploit our own resources and give out to the world. We're not even unified enough to help each other, to share with one another all that we have, to become a formidable force. Africa must wake up and occupy its position on the global stage. Please share your thoughts on this in the comments and share this video. Like this video as well, and if you haven't subscribed to this channel, please go ahead and subscribe. Check out our other videos in the channel, and until next time, see you in the next video. Peace.